Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast. I'm joined today by Elizabeth Rice. Liz, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And I always like to start off by just learning about our guests. So I'm going to dive right in there with the loaded question. Who is Elizabeth Rice?
Some days I don't know. No, so Liz Rice, my title is Senior Vice President of Business Operations and Strategy for Blackstone Consulting Incorporated. We are an organization based in Los Angeles, and we provide food service, security service, and environmental service workers across the globe. Really, we have some international clients. And so from a professional sense, I'm responsible for several support service organizations in one of our largest contracts with a large healthcare provider here in the United States. So I oversee human resources, learning and development, our business consulting team, and communications for the 3,000 healthcare security officers we have working in hospitals around the country for this client. And I live in Oakland, California. I'm a native Californian. I grew up in California. I'm a small town girl, transformed into a city girl. I'm a lifelong equestrian and a social justice focused individual. And I'm excited to be here today and talk to you.
Awesome. Now, the one thing that you alluded to was, the role that you're in right now. You've been in the security industry for 3 years. So what was it that led to you transitioning to this industry?
Yeah, so I've been officially in this role for 3 years, or with this company for 3 years, not in this role the whole time. But I technically can claim, I think, 6 years in the industry because I came into the industry via I was a management consultant, and I was hired through my firm by Kaiser Permanente to help with a project back in 2000, I think it was 15, looking at their pharmacy security strategy. So that was my first exposure to the healthcare industry, or healthcare security industry. And so since then, I've been involved in many different security related projects, and then was recruited by my current employer 3 years ago to join and help support this particular contract that they have, and really look at how it's a big contract with a long life. So my role was really to come in and help Blackstone take a look at what do we need to do to keep this project or this contract in good standing for the full life of the contract. So the security industry was not somewhere I thought I would end up. But I do remember after that first project telling my family and friends, I know way more about security cameras and network video recorders than I ever could have imagined because we were looking at the physical controls. And then, since then I did some cybersecurity projects as a management consultant as well. And now in this role, I've really been able to learn the contract guarding world, and learn more about frontline security operations, and really surprised myself by falling in love with the industry. I think healthcare is fascinating. I think healthcare operations, if you are a supply chain person or a business person, is just amazingly complex and interesting. And then add in the security element, and how important security is in our hospitals to make sure that we can provide good care. It's just become a great place. And then outside of that, I'm a mission driven person. So being aligned with healthcare, and then also really looking at, we have 3,000 security professionals in this contract that I work on. And part of my responsibility is making sure that it's a great place to work. So the fact that I can do that and really have that positive impact for security officers. And we'll talk more about it today, but also really look at how do we grow and advance our people in this industry? How do we really help them see this as a place to come and stay, like I did, surprisingly, right? It wasn't somewhere I thought, but now I can see myself staying here a long time, or use it as a jumping point to other awesome professions. So that's kind of my story of what brought me here and why I'm staying for now.
Awesome. Now, the other thing is too, it's March, this is International Women's Month. And this will be a part of our conversation today as well. So I think a good starting point would be to just discuss what International Women's Month is.
So since we agreed to record this, I have to correct myself because it's actually Women's History Month. And I think I called it International Women's Month because a while back there was a group that called it Women's International Month. But so the history around it is Congress recognized Women's History Week back in 1981. And then in 1995, ever since 1995, it's really become Women's History Month. And the goal of it is to really highlight and look at the history and the contributions that women have made in the United States. And so I think that, so this is for the United States. I'm not sure if beyond the US that this is seen as a full International Women's Month, but I think other countries have kind of picked up on it from what I understand, because the group that called it International Women's Month was a global girls organization that I did some volunteer work with. So when I was looking at this, I was like, oh, it's actually Women's History Month. And particularly, I think it's March 8th is Women's History Day. I'd have to look at it. But again, it's really about celebrating the history of what women have contributed and what it's taken to get as far as we have.
Awesome. Now, you touched on it a little bit there, but why is it important for us to look back and really recognize Women's History Month?
Well, I mean, obviously women have been contributing to the world for forever, right? The world really, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for women. And so, like any month that recognizes a particular group and particularly minority groups, it's really about showcasing the history and helping people learn about what has come before today to get to where we are, and why understanding that history can help us be stronger together. So, particularly when it comes to bias, which there is gender bias, right? Just the same way that we see racial bias and other things, educating yourself and understanding the stories of those that have walked that walk is helpful in keeping our biases from getting in the way of decision making, or getting in the way that we run our lives or our businesses or whatever it is. So, in my mind, a month like this that really looks at that, whether it's Black History Month or Native American Heritage Month or Women's Month, it's really about people learning and understanding the significance of the history and where we've come. Right now with women, with Women's History Month, the right to vote in the United States came in 1920. Not that long ago, really, when you look at it. We still have an 18% pay gap in the United States between men and women. So that means that a woman who's doing the same job as a man in most cases is very likely to make 18% less than that man. And then we also see a representation gap in our C-suite organizations. So we still, Fortune 500 companies, we're only at about 7% of those big CEO seats being held by women. So while we've made a lot of progress in the women's world and seeing women in the workplace, we still have work to do. And we'll talk more about that, I think, more in our conversation today, but it's just important to know that history and understand how it contributes to the world that we live in today.
Absolutely. Now, I think you would agree, just based on our conversation so far, that a diverse workplace provides a number of advantages. What do you think are some of those elements of a diverse team that, sorry, I'm going to edit this part.
Yeah, that's okay.
What do you think are some of those elements a diverse team is able to leverage?
So, to me, diversity, there's so much power in diversity because, especially in the security industry, we're asked to solve problems all the time, right? We see a risk, we have to mitigate that risk. And when we think about problem solving, if you're doing a root cause analysis on a risk, for example, you need to frame and reframe that problem until you figure out the root cause so that you can get at the root cause and not just slap a Band-Aid on some of the symptoms. And the power of diversity is really, diversity allows us to look at things from different perspectives. If you've got people from different walks of life, whether it's age or gender or race or education, they're going to see things differently. And I think that if you're trying to grow as a company, you're trying to solve complex problems, and if you're trying to innovate, right? You look at, solutions don't come from group think, right? Solutions and innovation comes when you have disagreement, right? Because that's where you figure out how to solve a problem, and that's how we grow.
Right.
So diversity is powerful in the workplace. And there's lots of research out there that says if you have a diverse workforce, your company is going to perform better. There's powerful bottom line impacts to having a diverse workplace. And so I think, that's one of the big advantages. Some of the other things that are important to talk about when you're talking about diversity is inclusive and diverse workplaces drive employee engagement. They help with turnover, which is expensive, right? So again, if you're a company thinking about bottom line performance, an inclusive and diverse workforce that has strategies that really uplift that can help your bottom line that way with reducing turnover. And then for us, we're being asked to change. I feel like the security industry and healthcare security in particular is being asked to change right now. Safety in our hospitals, especially as we see increase in active shooter right now with COVID, we've got a lot of really kind of stressed out situations going on. Now we have the vaccine strategies and how are we going to keep the inventory safe and manage the supply chain of people showing up for appointments. We're being asked to grow and change, and diversity can play a powerful role in that. So, that's why I think it's important to be deliberate in how you recruit for diverse candidates and how you create a workforce where they want to stay.
Now, and you mentioned this earlier, you just kind of closed with it there, but one of the things that you were tasked with was making sure that the environment was an environment that people wanted to work in, and it was a great place to work. And
Mm-hmm.
and you've been able to achieve as an organization a great deal of diversity. And one of the things that you were responsible for is launching this initiative, which I think is a great initiative. And again, it's an initiative for your employees. That being said, I've had the opportunity to experience some of the training, some of the resources that have been developed and deployed. What was the process of creating this network? And would you mind sharing a little bit about this network as well?
Yeah. So when I started 3 years ago, like I said, I was new to the industry in the sense that it was the first time I'd thought of myself as part of the industry. Because as a consultant, I was working on these projects, but I was a management consultant. So
Right.
first thing I did is I went to some conferences, and I have worked in industries like health, like education, and even in some of my other projects in healthcare as a management consultant, there were a lot of women. And the thing that stuck out to me when I went to some of the security conferences was how few women there were at the conferences. It just was like right in my face. And then, I was at one conference, and I started to realize that a good percentage of the women that were there were in sales and marketing roles for the vendors, right? They were in the, can't remember what the word is, with the vendor room where all the vendors are, right? And they were there as the marketing professionals. You didn't see as many like female operators, like who were really leading frontline operations. And so I took note of that because I've been part of diverse industries, but also been part of some really amazing women's group. And so I saw an opportunity to maybe bring that up and bring that to the forefront. And so our customer, where I work, they value diversity as well. And actually in our contract, they have a corporate, like a KPI for us. It's it's about a corporate social responsibility strategy. And so we were able to then talk to them about the idea of starting a women's organization to really bring attention to diversity on our contract. And they were very excited about that because for them, it was a value alignment. So it was good for us. It was good for them. It was good for the performance of the contract. So I reached out, kind of just put an open calling out to the women on our contract and said, hey, anybody interested in showing up and talking about what it means to be a woman in the security industry and talk about, maybe starting a women's organization here on our contract. And I had 25 people show up to the call, and I had 20 of those 25 people agree to be founding members for this organization. They're really excited. A lot of them had never been invited to have this conversation. They were encouraged by the idea of it. And so we jumped into creating it. And the first thing that we did was to get to know each other. And again, like I said, I've been part of women's organizations in the past. So I'm a scholar from the Committee of 200, which is a really large women in business organization. And then I worked for Watermark for Women, which is a women's organization based in Silicon Valley. Then I also went to a women's school for my graduate degree. So I've had a lot of experience around this. And so I knew that what was really important was that they were going to create this. Like, I didn't want to create this. This had to be created by our field leaders because that was how it was going to become most relevant. So the first thing they said is, well, we want to get to know each other, and like, we want professional development as the founding members. And I said, great, let's have a retreat. So we actually got together for 4 days in person right before COVID hit and had an amazing time. And it was really fun to see because a lot of them were nervous, right? They'd never been or done anything like this. And these were women, some women had been in the industry a year, some women had been in the industry for 35 years, right? So it was a big age range, a big range of experience. And in those 4 days together, we did professional development for ourselves. So we had an executive presence workshop, we had a personal brand workshop, we had fun. We went out and did some fun things, and then we built the organization. So pen and paper, all kinds of creative things all over the walls. And we really defined what we wanted this organization to be. We built a roadmap. We figured out how we were going to drive the execution part of it. And so in the end, one of the things that was really important to them was that they wanted this to be an organization built by women for everyone. They didn't want to make it so inclusive that it really created a divide between men and women on the contract. And so our tagline is "Together we make a difference." And really, we opened up our membership to anyone on our contract, so men and women. And now we're starting to look at partnering with outside organizations. And the men register as allies. And they have access to all the same professional development resources as the women do. We've a couple that are exclusive to women, but in the most part, they're open to everyone. And so the programs that we have that we've been building is we have a mentor and sponsor program. We have a scholarship and education program. We have a regional council program, which is really about networking at the base level. And then we have ally and awareness programs. And through the ally and awareness programs, we do professional development webinars. So we've already done one on branding and executive presence. We're doing one on LinkedIn and resumes. We're doing one on interviews. We're doing one on becoming an emotionally balanced leader, which is really about EQ, not IQ, and the importance that emotional intelligence plays in leading. And we've got lots more planned. So it's exciting. I think the thing that's been so cool for me to watch is that the group of founding members, we have 20 of them, but now we actually have, I think, 20 more women who are called champions, and they're out in the hospitals. And so now we're 40 women building this thing together. Plus, we actually have some men who have joined our founding team too, which is good. Is that it's built by everyone, right? It's not like leadership came in and said, this is how we're going to do this. It was a process that was created from the inside. And that's what I think has brought so much excitement around it, because when COVID hit, we put a pause on things, and the founding members actually reached out and said, can we start working on this again? We miss working on it. It's like our fun project. We want to be working on it. And so it's been great. We get emails from officers saying they're so excited. I've had at some of the retreats, I had a woman break down in tears and say, I've been in this industry 35 years, and this is the most professional development I've ever experienced. And so not only is it up-leveling the conversation on diversity, it's up-leveling the conversation about leadership development and what we really need to be thinking about when it comes to developing our people, which, like I said, contributes to the reduction of turnover, contributes to retention, and should also make companies feel good, because your employees spend at least 30% of their lives working for you. And if you can create a good workplace, like, I don't know, to me, that's like doing good in the world, right? So that's a bit about our story and where we're at right now. I don't know if you have any questions to elaborate on that, but that's the summary of it.
Well, no, that it just sounds like a great development process. So essentially, everybody who was involved were kind of your founding members. Were the ones who really developed the content and the path for it. So I think, yeah, just by doing it that way and not having it kind of as a mandate from higher up,
Yeah.
obviously you build the engagement in right there. And yeah, I guess that's how you've really been able to leverage the engagement, number one, and then just everybody kind of helping that process of collectively building the content. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah. And the other benefit to that is it's professional development for the people leading it, right? So
Right.
my team, I don't have years and years of security experience. I have business expertise, right? I know how to build strategies and get things done in complex environments. That's why I have the job that I have. And so I hired a team. My business consulting group is a mix of security professionals and business professionals. And so my business professionals have really great skills in project execution, communication strategy, change management. And so what's neat is the founding members, because we're a combination of those two groups, my business people are learning more about security, and then the security operators are learning more about project management, about strategy, how to take a strategy to execute it. So it's got ripple effects far beyond just the group, right? And we're actually seeing several of the women in the group have been promoted, right? And so I think there's also this camaraderie that's being built and this confidence that's coming by being surrounded and feeling, like you have something to connect to. So it's been really great and fun. I know all of us, like, some days it's like, oh man, we have another call, but then we get into it and we get going. It's like, it's really great. We miss being able to see each other in person. We're doing a virtual retreat with our champions soon. And I've done a lot of online learning and online engagement, so we'll make it interesting, but it's not going to be the same as the days where we could get together and, open a bottle of wine and pull out the sticky notes and do the work. So.
No, it's never quite the same, but you can still get a lot of the value out of the virtual environment now that everybody's so
Yes.
comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, my personal experience, being a person of color, my inclination has always been to avoid groups similar to this. Groups that have been built on the concept of either gender or specifically ethnicity. In my case, for me, I felt like it was a form of segregation, or almost that by being a part of this group, I'm acknowledging subconsciously some kind of deficiency or some kind of inadequacy on my part that that would exclude me from being a part of the larger group and needing to be in a smaller group to really excel. Now, my thinking has changed on that over time, but originally that was my inclination. Did you have a similar feeling, or did you encounter similar feelings when you were launching this initiative?
Yeah, so I didn't personally, mostly because I'd been part of other women's organizations before. I didn't know how how in this industry it would be received. So I guess there was a thought in the back of my mind, like, this is a new place for me. There's a lower percentage of women in this industry. But I don't know. I don't let those sorts of thoughts stop me. I'm a risk taker in that sense. But I do know some of our founding members were worried about this, and they came and talked about it. And that's part of the reason why we came up with the Together We Make a Difference. And really, it's an organization built by women for everyone, because it is really important to create space for common understanding and common experience. And there's power in that. But it is also an opportunity to really raise awareness if you don't create an organization that is exclusive. And so in advance of this conversation, I did check in with some of those women who were concerned and asked them where they're at. And they were like, oh, we're not concerned at all. Like, we love it. We love the conversations that are happening. We feel really confident about it. And when we created this, we didn't really see it at all around, anything to do with deficiency. It's about shared experience, right? So I think about I work with a lot of military folks, right? Our industry has a lot of military people. And one of the things that I've heard is that when you're in the military, you have shared experience. That's why veteran groups exist. That's why, veteran friendships last a lifetime. It's because you have this shared experience. And when you are with somebody who understands your experience, there's strength and power in that, right? And so same thing for women. We go back to the beginning of the conversation, we talk about history, like, the workplace isn't still really built for women. We do have unique struggles in the workplace in general. And then in the security industry, because we are such a minority, there's unique challenges. And so, whether it's, dealing with that moment where you're on post and that doctor looks at you and says, I need a man for this post, or, we have a lot of single mothers on my contract. So the idea of you've got mandatory overtime to fill that post, and you've got a childcare situation that you have to deal with when you're new to the industry, figuring all that out, women helping women figure that out. So really it was about creating a network where people could come together and have a place to share their common experiences, and really leverage that strength and use that to uplift themselves. One of the sayings that several of my mentors use is this concept of failing forward, right? Most people's career is not a straight line of success, 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 success. It's actually like success, failure, growth, success, failure, growth, right? And shared experience, and knowing that there's other people that understand what you're going through, or maybe can be a resource to you or a thought partner to problem solve, that can help you fail forward, right? Because you have that network. And then by bringing men into it, that creates that awareness. So I mentioned at the beginning that like awareness and educate, we all have bias, right? It's natural, it's human to have biases. It's the way we're wired. The way that change happens is when you recognize your bias and you make a different decision because you understand what's going on and where your thought process is coming from. The only way you get there is through exposure, right? And so by bringing men to the table, we're able to understand each other different, and then again, grow stronger together and solve problems because we have diverse perspectives and things like that. So that's kind of the story of where I see this when it comes, but I respect the concern, right? Because otherness is something we do to each other a lot, right? The other group, and divisiveness is really dangerous, and scary and complex. So I understand the concerns too, but I'm pleased to know that the women who were worried about that are feeling really empowered. And I have yet to hear anything negative about it. I'm sure that behind closed doors things might be said, but so far it just seems like a really positive and uplifting thing. And we have like full leadership support from all of our leaders, male and female, and our customers. So it's really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. And I know when you say probably behind closed doors, there are some negative things. Like obviously, no process, nothing is perfect, but
Right.
you do have a very good process in place. And again, having everybody involved, everybody has a level of accountability. So there's people want to be engaged in that problem solving process.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I'm so grateful for our customer too, right? Because our customer has backed it. So that helps get backing across the organization. And that's a really unique relationship that we have with this particular customer that is amazing to me, I think. And I think it's unique. I don't think there's a lot of customers that, especially, I shouldn't assume, but I don't assume there's a lot of customers that have that type of relationship with their contract security provider, right? And I think that's really special.
Yeah, no, being on both sides in my experience, both being the in-house program that was leveraging a contract outsourced provider, and being that outsourced provider as well, being the liaison between that. No, I would say from my experience anyways, what your team is doing is seems fairly unique.
Yeah.
No,
It's exciting. Yeah. I'm hoping we see more of it because it's good work.
no, absolutely it is. Now, for my own curiosity, you talked about everything that's been put together so far, and there's, a lot planned for the future. Are you able to elaborate on some of what we can expect moving forward?
Yeah. So the big thing we're trying to figure out is like, where can we provide the most value to the front line, right? Because we see a lot of saturation at the leadership level, and now we're really figuring out how do we get down to the officer level. So these webinars are one of the things we're really banking on in current state in the world today. Once we can have more in-person events, I would love to see networking happy hours and things like that our officers can come to. Excuse me. We're partnering with their union to really look at some of this stuff as well. Obviously, the union's excited about this work. They think it's great and really important. So I think that we can see internal to this contract, I'm hoping to see more mentor relationships. I'm hoping to see mentorship become more of a culture. So this culture of mentorship, this culture of coaching versus discipline, and really see that change coming. And then I think, I know I've been talking to outside organizations. I'd like to see us expand out, not necessarily to have outside members join this organization, but to use this case study and to use this framework that we've built to build other organizations like this, whether it's at another company or it's as part of IAHSS. Partnering, we do partner with the as is women in security organizations. So strengthening those relationships. And then the big thing we're talking about right now is we in the working group that's scholarship and education, we'd primarily been focusing on access to healthcare security and professional security certifications. But we're broadening that now to think about, like, maybe we can sponsor LinkedIn Learning memberships, right? Where you can, if you are a frontline person and you're asked to put together a PowerPoint or Excel spreadsheet, or you want to learn something about leadership or education or difficult conversations, if anybody has ever used LinkedIn Learning, it's got everything you can imagine from a professional development perspective. And we have those things accessible through our LMS, but we also think that something like LinkedIn Learning could be where we also provide more education. So yeah, I mean, my long-term goal is to see increased membership in our organization. I think success looks like our framework being used to start other organizations, and then really measuring and seeing more women move into leadership roles, and then just, those emails that say, thanks so much for doing this. I'm really excited that I learned this. And those should be from men and women. So yeah, that's where I think we're headed right now.
Yeah, no, I'll agree. Those messages with any type of program like this, the messages that you get to see how it's actually impacted somebody are the most rewarding part of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They make my day every time I get one. Any emails like that as a leader, when you get that, thank you, I appreciate this. It's just, it makes the hard work worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Now, we've covered a number of topics. Is there anything I haven't asked you yet that you wanted to discuss?
I mean, I think that it's important to remember that promoting women, and so I feel like in my seat, right, I have a responsibility to uplift other women. I think that me being in my seat sends a message out there that our company does value diversity. A woman can be at the leadership table, and we want more women at the leadership table. So I think that, the only thing that I really want to bring up is just, as a woman in this industry, you try to set the example, right? You try to be your best, you try to uplift other women, mentor other women, bring them up. And I would just say to all men and women, just pay attention, right? Learn, use Women's History Month to learn some things about, how far we've come, and then figure out how you can be part of where we're going to go from here. Because I think, again, like our tagline says, together we make a difference. And our industry will be stronger if we focus on this, because again, we are being asked to change, right? When I go to these conferences and I listen, part of the reason I love my job is because there's so many complex problems, and I love complex problems. And because, with enterprise security risk management and security really going from a security guard and a camera to a strategic business unit that really makes a difference in the experience of your employees, and in healthcare, the delivery of care, right? The ultimate results of care. A safe care environment helps you deliver strong care. So diversity will help us grow stronger. Diversity will help us have a better seat at the table. And I think that if your company doesn't have an active conversation going on around inclusiveness in the workplace, diversity, gender, race, whatever it might be, like, don't be afraid to start that conversation, because it's important, and it will help your bottom line. It really will. And there's plenty of research out there that you can find that tells you that. So I think that's really important. Outside of that, I mean, I think we didn't really touch on this, and I know we did in previous conversations, on the front line, the power of mixed gender response teams when we're talking about moments of de-escalation.
Right.
That's another really important piece of the puzzle here, is that sometimes a woman is better, sometimes a man is better, sometimes it doesn't matter. It's really about your ability to channel masculine and feminine energy and how you respond to a situation. We're really talking about that on our contract, like how that plays a role. We also have added bias training to our de-escalation training, specifically because we know that the second someone walks through the door into a hospital, they are a patient, no matter who they are first. Then if there's a disruptive moment, you need to obviously respond, but you need to check your own biases, right? I mean, everything in the news right now talks about that. So we're really, really making sure that the way we train our officers, we're deliberate about this. So that ties into the conversation about why gender diversity is so important as well.
Right. And actually, just to speak to your point, I'll give an example from my own experience. I'm a guy who's 6'3", so I'm a pretty big guy. But there's situations where, like you said, a doctor says, I want a man on this post, or I want a man for this call. There's been times where I've went to a call because somebody's violent or somebody's aggressive, and they see me and right away they target me. People think right away they see the big guy, they're going to back down. Sometimes that just escalates them even more. Now, I worked with a female officer who was, she may have been 5 feet tall. Those same situations, we would bring her in, and then she would be able to de-escalate that person very quickly. And sometimes it was a very different approach than I would take. Like, I would take the more empathic approach and just try to, really de-escalate, calm them down. She would come in and it would almost be like an authoritarian, like, mother figure, where she gets right in their face and
Yep.
like, okay, I'm sorry. And they would follow, so it's not always about the size of the person. There's so many other factors at play. So it just reminded me of that. So I just wanted to make sure to mention that.
Yeah, I mean, men and women are different, and that's good, right? Like, difference isn't bad. It's amazing. It's great. I mean, I don't know, not to go on a soapbox, but I think diversity is what makes our world awesome, right? Whether it's diversity of the landscape you're in, or age, or anything. So, I mean, there's just so much power in this, and so I think the more we think about it that way, the better. Yeah, and I'm just excited to be part of it. I'm excited to be part of the conversation, and I just hope that I can help others build momentum around this stuff as well. And again, just a lot of gratitude to our customer for helping us with this.
Absolutely. Now, as we're wrapping up, do you have a special message for the Healthcare Security Cast community?
I mean, for me, I know our group, the Women in Healthcare Security group at our client, you can always reach out. We're here to help. So I guess the message that I have is, if you have questions about this, ask. Don't be afraid to have the hard conversations. Educate yourself, right? Use these different opportunities. Just because it's Women's Month, or it's Black History Month, or it's Native American History Month, doesn't mean it's the only time you can learn. Continue to seek out and understand why these conversations matter. And then, if you want to reach out, you can find me on LinkedIn. I guess I can share my email right now. It might be a good time to share my email. So my email is elizabeth.rice@blackstoneconsulting.com. So it's actually blackstone-consulting.com. So elizabeth.rice@blackstone-consulting.com, but you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm responsive there. But let me know if I can help. I mean, if there's anyone out there that's been thinking about this, or is doing this type of work already and wants to connect, there's power in network, there's power in community. And again, together we make a difference. So that's really, really the message I have. And I'm just grateful to be here.
Awesome. And I'll reiterate that Liz is very responsive on LinkedIn. So definitely a good way to connect with her. So Liz, I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much for having this conversation.
Thank you.
And I'm sure everybody got a lot of value out of this. It's a good discussion.
Perfect. Happy Women's History Month.